Life without Trent Baalke does not mean that the Jaguars' hard work is done. We'll discuss all of this today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. A quick reminder that we are available wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you watch those podcasts, or wherever you hear them. Make sure you check into that location each and every day so you do not miss an episode of the show. That is brought to you today by, it is Crossover Thursday for a reason, because we have crossover shows on Locked On Podcast Network, and it's presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Crossover shows are obviously involving teams that are still playing right now, but yet and still, here we are. The Jaguars are not one of those teams, and for a number of reasons, the everydayers know why. And if you're new here, you should know why too. That's because they've been not very good as of late. Here's what we're going to talk about today. What's next for the Jacksonville Jaguars after separating themselves from 4-year general manager Trent Baalke? We'll discuss that. It's never too late to do the right thing. We'll make sure that we throw that in there for Shad Khan, because everybody's saying, oh, this is the most disastrous thing. He fumbled. Yeah, okay. But guess what? Now he picked it up and he's ready to go. More work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. Some people think they may double back to Liam Cohen. Maybe by the time you guys watch this, Cohen will have signed his, I think the Associated Press reported that he's due to sign his contract today. If he doesn't sign it today, then there might be a little bit of hope that maybe the Jaguars do double back. We'll discuss that. But first, let's get into life after Trent Baalke being dismissed or separated or going his separate ways or whatever. Shad thanked Trent Baalke, and he should have, and we'll do that a little bit here. All right. We're going to at least show people a little bit of professional grace. And mentioned that Trent Baalke does deserve some credit for some things that he did here in Jacksonville. Brian Thomas Jr. made the Pro Bowl today. Congratulations to BTJ for making the Pro Bowl. Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's one of the five finalists. He actually should be one of the top 3. I would put him ahead of Bo Nix and Malik Neighbors, but Jaden Daniels and Brock Bowers would be very, very difficult to beat in that. But the fact that the Jaguars have a young player like that, it really is a credit to who drafted him, and that is Trent Baalke. I also like the fact that Trayvon might win most. I think he's been voted the most improved Jaguar for the second consecutive year. Trayvon Walker had double-digit sacks, and he's quite frankly, he's known as one of the best edge setters and run defenders in the league, and he really does bring a physicality and a toughness to the Jacksonville Jaguars that if you're not careful and get caught up in all of the losses, you could really sit here and not give him the credit for his impact on the game and how people feel about him around the league. So with that being said, thanks Trent Baalke. Trent Baalke did some good things. The roster, especially with the early day picks. If I have a gripe with Trent, if I had a gripe with Trent, not have. If I had a gripe with Trent, I got to be real careful when I say this. My biggest gripe is the accountability part of it. And when it came to explaining what was going on, sometimes it's a little bit coy, and it was just a lot of coach speak. It sounded good, but when explaining why they weren't physical, that they lack physicality. At some point when you say it's not a personnel issue and you draft them for traits, then tell us what it is. You're the GM. But there's a need to know basis with information, but it's just like guys get fired and then you move on, and defensive coaches leave and say, man, you're running to help out. We really want to help this. And I think coaches really, really do care. A GM is not just somebody that can draft on day one and day two. A GM is somebody that really, just ask the Rams. They do that well, but then they draft on day three extremely well. They know when to pay players and when they shouldn't pay players. And they replenish very well. Not only that, they replenish their coaching staff. That's a coach-centric team. I always felt, and people thought that I was being a little bit unfair. Even a former player thought I was being unfair. When I saw Trent on the field, and I've had guys, former player who was probably in elementary school the first time I covered a pro practice, tell me that people do that all the time. And I really can't stand when people either tell me why I feel the way I feel or when they tell me something that I know for a fact is totally false. It's as if I'm picking at Trent, bringing up the fact that he looks like a coach. If you go to a practice and you saw Trent Baalke, you actually, if it's your first time ever at an NFL practice, you would have thought he was a coach. Tom Coughlin didn't do that except when he was the coach and the GM the first time. But when he came back the second time, he wasn't like that. I mean, he was there. He had everything, but he wasn't talking to the players. If anything, he was talking to coaches. Dave Caldwell didn't do that. Shaq Harris didn't do that. Gene Smith didn't do that. I know people are like, but that don't mean nothing. Rick Reaprish didn't do that. And I talked to people around the league, and their coaches didn't do it too. Folks mistook the pictures of John Lynch at practice with a suit on with me saying that that's exactly what Trent Baalke was doing. It appears to me that this team was too GM-centric, and it wasn't coach-centric. And to me, that's a problem when it feels like somebody wants credit for stuff. I think the Dallas Cowboys are owner-centric, and they're not coach-centric. In today's leagues, you have to be very, very coach-centric. And Shad refers to that as ego. And we've said this here before. I think that's a mischaracterization of what that is. I don't think that's what it is at all. It's just that if you decide to look at it that way, then you're going to be left out in the cold, because that ego is something that a coach absolutely is one of the characteristics I believe that he absolutely needs to be successful. Now, it can look differently. An ego can look this way, or it can look that way. And it doesn't always look the same. There's no monolithic way to be an egomaniac, but an egomaniac can also be an accountable person. That's an alpha dog. It's the guy. See, they look for those type of players when it comes to leadership. I was told at one time they would put magazines. They'd invite a whole bunch of players and put certain magazines in the waiting area just to see who gravitates toward a certain type of magazine. And they have a camera in there. They also would just sometimes have cameras in the room, and guys would be interacting, and they see who took over the room and who dominated the conversation and who was docile. And all of these psychological things that they do that go into why they draft players, that applies also to your whole franchise. And I really believe that the Jaguars now have an opportunity, as we explore life after Trent Baalke, to finally get this right. But it starts with Shad Khan first admitting, he has to admit that his whole line of thinking about what a leader is has been incorrect. And that's the hard part. There's more work to do for the Jaguars. And guess what? We're going to discuss it here on Locked On Jaguars in just a second, on the day after the dismissal or the separation of former GM Trent Baalke. Today's show is sponsored, brought to you by Talkspace. Therapy is a game changer. It can manage stress, improve sleep, and make you communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be a challenge. There's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours, and it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home. even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans. And for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize your mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL. Enter the promo code SPACE80 to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL and enter the code SPACE80 to get $80 off the first month. And show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL, promo code SPACE80. Moving along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it was a wild Wednesday. And if you're in Jacksonville, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There were snow flurries, ice all over the place, people home from work that weren't supposed to be home from work, kids home from school, folks playing around in the ice, and Trent Baalke being the GM and finding out that Liam Cohen is gone. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do this for a minute. Y'all know what happened, but I'm going to play something from Locked On NFL AM that aired this morning where Tyler Rowland, he's my brother. He is my brother. I love Tyler Rowland. But Tyler Rowland also covers the Tennessee Titans, who are our heated rivals. I can't tell you more than enough how I think he kind of was happy about what was going on yesterday. But on the day that the Jaguar fan base was kind of celebrating, Tyler Rowland was like, what in the hell is going on around there? And this is why there's more work to do. And this is also why I've always said that we have our finger on the pulse. When you're local, you have the finger on the pulse of the team. On the day that the Jaguars will be celebrating, it turns out that the rest of the league was finally looking around going, what in the hell is going on? Check this out.
The Jacksonville Jaguars are an absolute disaster. Things were crazy for the Jaguars on Wednesday. We started the day with news that Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator and the front runner for the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching job, would be staying in Tampa Bay and did not want to go to Jacksonville because he did not want to work with their general manager, Trent Baalke. This is on the heels of rumors and reports that Ben Johnson, the new Bears coach, didn't want to go to Jacksonville because he didn't want to work with their general manager, Trent Baalke. Well, after missing out on both of those candidates, the Jaguars then fired Trent Baalke.
Yeah, so I thought I'd play that. That wasn't breaking news to anybody around here, but what is breaking news, or maybe breaking news to a lot of folks that aren't local, is this. Yesterday was not a day for us to be embarrassed or feel sorry for ourselves. It was early in the morning, but when this news happened that he just described that shook up the entire National Football League and made Jacksonville front and center, we were all happy. Not happy that a man got fired. Well, at least some of us weren't, but I can't speak for everybody. But happy because there's work to be done. You didn't want that work to be done by somebody who, while he picked some good players on day one and day two, by somebody who wasn't going to be able to maximize the opportunity. So I'm going to park right here and I'm going to go back to 2021 when the Jaguars drafted Trevor Lawrence and they hired Urban Meyer and they retained Trent Baalke. I said the key to this entire thing was them maximizing what this means through the draft, through free agency, through the acquiring of talent, to the direction that the team was going. This needed to be maximized. This wasn't a situation where Trevor Lawrence, because of everyone's expectation of how good he is and how good he was and how good he was going to be and the prince that was promised, all of that stuff that sells tickets, all of the stuff that gets people excited. You see, that stuff doesn't mean anything when folks start punching you in the mouth. It doesn't mean anything when folks start trying to sack Trevor Lawrence. It doesn't mean anything when folks start swiping at the ball. It doesn't mean anything when your offensive line can't push people. It doesn't mean anything when your defensive line can't stop from being pushed. It doesn't mean anything when your defensive backs are the way that they are. It also doesn't mean anything if the GM and the coach aren't in lockstep. It doesn't mean anything if you have a bad structure where both people are independently talking to the owner as opposed to having a chain of command with one voice. See, those are characteristics of a team that wins. The characteristics of a team that wins, you don't have a whole bunch of people chirping. You got one person that's chirping. You know who the leader is. And the Jaguars have not had that. And I think that starts at the very, very top. The work that has to be done, in my opinion, now is Shad has to change more than GMs. He has to change who he is. He has to change how he thinks. Or you're going to end up right back in the same situation. It is so hard that when you have had an ideology for so many years, all aimed at doing the right thing, it is so hard for a lot of people to say, you know what, we got to do a 180 at some point. And he talked about that when he was talking about how it would be suicidal to break everything down. You don't have to break everything down. You just got to break down the things that are hindering you from moving forward. And whether Trent Baalke was good at his job in the eyes of us doesn't matter. What really, really mattered was, if you're going to move forward, you're going to move forward with a new coach, then we have to be going in a new direction. Most people thought you can't go in a new direction in the same car with the same driver. And the driver for this franchise on a day-to-day basis was Trent Baalke, because this has been a GM-centric team. That leads to finger pointing, and it also leads to people thinking that they know what's wrong and trying to solve problems as opposed to trying to find solutions. That's where we are. That's why when Liam Cohen decided he couldn't work with Baalke, and we're yet to see whether he signs his contract with Tampa. We discussed that. Maybe he'll sign it and they'll move on, and we'll do that in just a second. But this has to be a little bit of a period of an attitude adjustment. You really have to listen. You got to do what he said in that interview with Baalke, when he said, if somebody comes in here and gives me some ideas, yeah, I'm open to moving on and doing whatever. And Trent basically, in their statement, in Shad's statement, Shad said it was mutual that Trent decided to move on. That's very admirable that a dude says, okay, we're going to start this process. You know what? I am hindering the team. Maybe we ought to just get somebody else in here. See, those are the types of things that you have to know before they happen. Like knowing if your team is physical or not, you got to know that before you put them out on the field. And then when everybody else realizes something, it's too late. You have your finger on the pulse of the team. Y'all got all of this OPSEC over there, operations security. Then you need to be knowing things that other people don't. You also need to be knowing whether somebody's taking $22 million from you, bird feeding themselves your money. See, those are the things that we're talking about. Everything has to be so tight. Everything has to be, all of the checks and balances have to be taken care of when you're trying to win a championship. Doesn't mean everything's always going to be perfect, but it helps if you guys have a clear direction, a clear understanding who you are, what you're trying to accomplish, and not just be throwing pasta against the wall to see if it's al dente, meaning that's when it sticks. Shout out to all my chefs out there. But that's it, man. Before you move forward, you got to change your mindset and change your mentality. It's like trying to outwork a bad diet. It doesn't work. You can't outwork a bad diet. I don't care how much you go to the gym. And especially when you're out of shape. See, the Jaguars aren't just this person that's in shape that's trying to maintain. The Jaguars are obese and out of shape. So when you're like that, you have to do drastic things. You got to cut out a lot of stuff. And you got to work out. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, I hope you do. I'm going to tell you why it's never too late to do the right thing. And that's what we're getting into. And then what's next and who's next in terms of the GM and the coaching search. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored, brought to you by FanDuel. We just discussed it, man. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs and these Final Four even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Locked on Jaguars here, talking about all of the events that happened yesterday, and a crazy day for the Jaguars as Trent Baalke and the Jaguars separated, and they will no longer be a part of each other. You know, this was just one of those things where everyone who, it's almost like, you know, you love somebody and you say, okay, we got to go. Let me talk to you for a minute. Your man, you got to leave him here. Everybody's just not meant to go on this journey. Trent Baalke just wasn't the guy to get the Jaguars to the next level. That's why I started the show by thanking him for getting the Jaguars to this point. I think 9 wins, unless they got lucky, was the best that they were going to be. It's more than just picking players. It's about being a leader, someone that people will run through a brick wall for. That it's almost like also the GM can't be the egomaniac. The GM has to be at the service of the team. And it has to come across that way. It has to feel that way. And it just didn't feel that way. But it's never too late. People are saying that we ain't going to never get this right unless Shad gets it right, in which I just kind of said that same thing. I said, okay, look, you got to change a little bit. Man, don't nothing change you more than reality unless you ignore that reality. But I think he ignored that reality long enough. And now, hopefully, he's seen the error of his ways. The first thing he needs to do is find out who his leaders are. And when they hire and this is why it has been so important, if they got to hire a leader of men. And that doesn't mean a play caller can't be a leader of men. This can't be so much focus on Trevor Lawrence and so much focus on having offense that is spectacular that you forget. The goal ain't to be pretty. The goal is to be beautiful. This is an inside-outside thing. You know what I'm saying? This is where people will look at you and they'll look at the results each and every week and go, y'all can say what y'all want to say. They keep winning. That's what the goal is. The goal isn't to lose games 38-37 and put up a bunch of numbers. No, that's the goal, it seems like, for a lot of folks, but the goal to win. And if you look into the playoffs, there are 3 out of these 4 teams. Even Washington, even though they do it in sort of new school way, they win the good old-fashioned way. Lamar Jackson's game, other than 2 plays against Buffalo, was way prettier than Josh Allen's game, unless you really, really dive into football. And maybe the beauty is not in what Josh didn't do. It's not in what he did, it's what he didn't do. And that is allow his ego to get in the way. And this is not saying that Lamar did, but Josh didn't allow his ego to get in the way. And he made everything about the team, but he still looked like the hero. And see, we got to think back to when Tom Brady was first winning those Super Bowls. Tom Brady was winning those Super Bowls, and New England was a run, ball-controlled defensive team. When Tom Brady put up the best numbers of his career with New England, they didn't win. They lost. That's when they had Randy Moss and Wes Welker and both of those tight ends. And then when they went back and became a little bit more of a running team, when they lost some of that explosiveness, they started to win again. And the same thing goes for the organization. You just can't want to be pretty. You got to be beautiful. And it's never too late to realize that. And I think Shad has really, really realized that. Football is a gladiator sport that comes down to blocking, tackling, execution, along with the procurement of talent. But it also comes, it's necessary that you have the proper leader, the proper direction. And when you start doing that, you have an identity. And somehow, even if it on the surface doesn't match the city, the fans will gravitate towards that and change who they are and blend in with winning. And then you create an identity. Make no mistake about it. The fans, when they had Gardner Minshew, showed up with a bunch of mullets and mustaches. They'll do whatever as long as it's something that'll hold. But see, that doesn't hold you. Having a caricature of a player who's not very good doesn't hold fans. There are media outlets around here playing it to the T, man. And I get it. Everybody has to sell something. But at the end of the day, you're almost selling your soul when you attach to something that you know is not sustainable. They have to make this sustainable. So what's next? Make it a coach-centric team. They're going to interview Patrick Graham. They're going to interview Robert Saleh for second interviews. I told you it's not out of the question that maybe by the time I record this, that they double back on Liam Cohen, but I'm hearing the name Joe Brady a lot. And that's cool. Whoever comes in here has to be a leader of men, not just the guy that the players like down in Miami. No shade to Mike McDaniel, but I wouldn't want a coach like that. I don't care about him being cool with the players. I only care about if they win, right? So what is next? Do they open the door? Do they wait for this weekend's games to end up and maybe give a call to somebody who is on one of those losing teams, right? They talked to Spagnuolo already. I don't think people want to go back in that direction, but Joe Brady seems like the one, and maybe Cliff Kingsbury. And then they have to find, whether it's through historical precedents where those guys were, or they have to find the GM, and this is where that job has changed. They have to find the GM that understands what that coach is, that is a great communicator, that is more of a support staff guy, that is not really a support staff guy. He runs the scouting department. He does all of that stuff. But they really, really do have to get someone that is sort of a conduit between Shad Khan and the coaching staff. And when he speaks to Shad, he's speaking for the coach and the organization. And when he's speaking to the coach, he's speaking for Shad and the organization. So that leadership, that guy has to be a quiet leader. And when I say a quiet leader, that doesn't mean a silent bully. There's a big difference. Just because we don't hear you, it does not mean that you're not over there causing a whole bunch of ruckus. All right. And you can always tell when there's ruckus behind the scenes. We knew it. National people didn't. And then all of a sudden they heard about it, and then bang, when it manifested itself in these interview processes, now everybody wants to go crazy. Don't go crazy now. We've been telling you for a couple of years that was what we've been doing. And fans have been, y'all don't know nothing. Y'all just speculating, going on what somebody said in San Francisco years ago. That's not the way this works. You don't even got to be down there every day to know that. That's not the way this works. We know a lot of people. A lot of people. A lot of people. All right, so that is what's next. We'll keep our eyes on the coaching search, on the GM search. Hopefully they find someone who jives together and presents Shad with some ideas that changes the thinking that he has at the core, and maybe he characterizes what a leader is. That most of the time an ego is a dude that has earned the right to have a big ego. All right, make sure you tap into Locked On NFL each and every day. It's a double dose of all of the great NFL coverage from around the league with the help of use of local experts. Tyler Rowland in the morning, hit you with a double shot of espresso, and I'll hit you upside your head with a razor or some clippers here in the barbershop. But either way, you're going to get the information that you need, so why not do it twice a day? Check out Locked On NFL wherever you get your podcast. You guys take care of each other. The work now begins. Hopefully, we didn't just get rid of Trent Baalke. You got rid of the attitude that you had before, and you have a new one. We'll talk about that as it progresses. We'll continue to let you know what happens. If there's any breaking news, you can get it right here on Locked On Jaguars. Take care. We'll see you next time.